World News Today, brought to you by Admiral Corporation, in behalf of Admiral distributors and dealers all over America and in many foreign lands. By shortwave broadcast, direct from important overseas stations and leading news centers in our own country, CBS reporters are waiting to bring you first-hand news from the world's political and battlefronts. Now, here's Douglas Edwards.
The American First Army has gained 3 miles on the northern flank of the Belgian Bulge and has cut one of the 2 main roads supplying the Germans on that front. To the south, the enemy is increasing pressure on the American 7th Army. A large force of Allied bombers based in Britain attacked German communications today. The Russians say they hold about 2/5 of Budapest. And in the Pacific, the Japanese say Allied warships are shelling the coast of Luzon and that a strong convoy has entered Lingayen Gulf. Observers at Pearl Harbor are awaiting news of possible further American blows in the Pacific. And now, news from Supreme Allied Headquarters. Admiral takes you direct to Paris. Charles Collingwood reporting.
The most dramatic events on the Western Front are now occurring along the Rhine in Alsace. In this section of Europe, which has for so long been disputed by both France and Germany, questions of prestige and tradition count for quite as much as strategic considerations. The Germans have come across the Rhine in a spectacular fashion to establish themselves a few miles north of Strasbourg, and the whole French nation has its eye on that corner of the front. They are worried. Up to this morning, we had been led to believe that the German battalion which had crossed the Rhine was not much more than a raiding party. 1 day's rations they had, we were told, and that they were almost cleared up. Now it appears that not only do the Germans still hold most of the towns they originally entered, but they have reinforced and landed armor and motor transport. American pilots bombing German motor transport in this area put them as close as 7 miles to Strasbourg. The wary Alsatians are once more taking to the roads as the war threatens to sweep over their homes again. There is an exodus from Strasbourg and Hagenau. And south of Strasbourg, in the Colmar pocket, the Germans have also landed tanks, and today 15 of them were attacking north toward Strasbourg. None of this is on a big scale, but it is having its effect on the French. In the Ardennes salient, where a much larger and more significant action is taking place, we have advanced in the north to cut the main east-west road in the northern half of the salient. This is Charles Collingwood in Paris, returning you to Admiral in New York.
That was a broadcast by Charles Collingwood, direct from Supreme Allied Headquarters. And now for more news from overseas, Admiral switches back again across the Atlantic, this time to CBS London, Richard C. Hottelet reporting.
The air offensive against the rear of the German armies in the west was kept going today by the United States 8th Air Force. More than 1,000 liberators and flying fortresses droned out from their bases in England this morning, picked up an escort of 650 fighters, and then split up over western Germany to bomb communications targets up and down the Rhine behind the Western Front. 2 of the forces struck at the railroad yards of Neuss, just west of Düsseldorf, and at Hanau, near Frankfurt on Main, which had been plastered by strong forces of RAF bombers last night. This is not a waste of bombs, nor is it at all an indication that previous bombing was not accurate. These points are vital railheads feeding von Rundstedt's forces at the front, and the enemy has organized special commandos for the high-speed repair of rail damage. The American bombing this morning came while these crews were hard at work, and not only did more damage to the physical installations, but dislocated the repair machinery. Apart from these points, the American heavies bombed 2 Rhine bridges, and also 2 other rail yards southwest of Karlsruhe that the enemy uses to supply his troops on our 7th Army front. One thing this air war had in common with the fighting on the ground was its cold. The bombers flew through temperatures of 50 degrees below. And on the ground, the whole front is in the grip of bitter cold tonight that numbs men's fingers and freezes their faces. When they're not fighting through German roadblocks and minefields, our men look around for shelter, a clump of woods, a bridge, a ruined house, and build themselves a fire to get a little warmth. BBC correspondent Robert Barr says that the woods and hills of the Ardennes look like a vast gypsy encampment. This is Richard Hottelet in London, returning you to Admiral in New York.
And now, news radio direct from Supreme Allied Headquarters. Admiral takes you to Paris. Charles Collingwood reporting.
As the German armies continue to retreat from the Ardennes salient, American troops have moved down from the north to cut the last main road leading out from the area the Germans are evacuating. This is the road from Houffalize to Saint-Vith, and we have cut it only 4 miles from the great road net of Houffalize itself. Of course, there are other minor roads leading out of the neck of the salient, but in the slippery, icy weather that prevails now, they will not support the traffic of the big road. Now is the critical time of the German retreat. Up until now, he's been able to move out in his own good time, and we've taken little toll of his retreating forces. But now we are narrowing in upon the Germans. We have cut their one good road, and after a week of snow and fog, the weather has providentially cleared, and all the air forces on the Western Front are up. Today looks like the day the air forces have been waiting for. The reports have only just started to come in, but up until noon today, the 9th Air Force alone had destroyed 170 motor vehicles and 3 armored vehicles in the salient, and that is only the beginning. The German salient is withering like a winter's leaf, and the next few days are the ones in which we may be able to turn it to our advantage. There is still a chance, but all the predictions made at the beginning of the breakthrough about how what looked like a German success may turn out to have been a German blunder, there is still a chance, although one says this cautiously, that they may have been right. The toll of dead and prisoners and equipment destroyed since the beginning is already very high. The enemy is now giving up most of the ground he won, and before it is all over, it may turn out that we have hurt him worse than he hurt us. This is Charles Collingwood in Paris, returning you to Admiral in New York.
Hello, BBC. This is Ian Wilson speaking from Supreme Headquarters. The Americans are over the Rhine. Supreme Headquarters announced a few minutes ago that General Hodges' 1st United States Army has crossed the Rhine. Elements reached the Rhine and crossed to establish a bridgehead on the east bank, somewhere south of Cologne.
We are interrupting our programs to bring you a news flash.
This is London calling. Here is a news flash. The German radio has just announced that Hitler is dead. I repeat that. The German radio has just announced that Hitler is dead.
We interrupt this program to bring you a special news bulletin from CBS World News. A press association has just announced that President Roosevelt is dead. The president died of a cerebral hemorrhage. All we know so far is that the president died at Warm Springs in Georgia.
All of us have lost a great leader, a far-sighted statesman, and a real friend of democracy. We have lost a hard-hitting chief and an old friend of the services. Our hearts are heavy. However, the cause which claimed Roosevelt also claims us. He never faltered, nor will we. I have done as you do in the field when the commander-in-chief falls. My duties and responsibilities are clear. I have assumed them. These duties will be carried on in keeping with our American tradition. As a veteran of the First World War, I have seen death on the battlefield. When I fought in France with the 35th Division, I saw good officers and men fall and be replaced. I know that this is also true of the officers and men of the other services, the Navy, the Marine Corps,